So in terms of running through the session this morning, we've got a formal portion where we'll hear from Angela Fox, who's the VP and Managing Director of Dell Australia and New Zealand, and also a previous mentoring pair will talk through their experiences, and most importantly, Jenny Morris from Orijen Group will talk through the program and the induction process. We'll be using Zoom technology to take you through this session, including some breakout sessions, and we'll explain more about that in a second. It's actually fairly easy to go through. If something doesn't work at your end, that's okay. We will chase you up and we'll make sure that you've got the opportunity to participate in a virtual mentoring session, but it'll feel like a virtual breakout this morning after we do this part. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Angela Fox, again, Senior VP for Dell in Australia and New Zealand, and he'll do the welcome address this morning. So thank you, Angela.
Angela, I think you're on mute.
Remember to come off mute. A good starting point. So good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for coming together in what we know are challenging times and times where we're all having to adapt to a new world. As Ben said, the first virtual launch of Dell Women in IT Executive Mentoring Program. So I'm extremely proud to once again be involved with the program and thank Randall and his team for their ongoing support of the program. This program's been running since 2007 and has seen 196 women mentees engaging and reaching their potential, assisted by an amazing 112 mentors, some of whom continue to be involved and have been involved in the program from the very beginning. So thank you to those mentors. Of course, as I said, I'd like to thank the DTA team, Orijen Group, Jenny and her team, and my team for adapting and changing and being resilient in what is an environment that we've had to quickly rotate and pivot and embrace technology and the business challenges that we are facing today in order to be virtual. As we all know, it couldn't be truer. We often talk in our industry about the significant change that we're undergoing, but it's never been more poignant than today with what we're experiencing here in Australia, in New Zealand, and across the world. And I'd like to just take a moment to talk briefly on how we can all react positively and embrace the uncertain times in which we're operating. Margie Worrell is a keynote speaker, author, coach, and leadership facilitator. She's actually now in the virtual world, our new norm, a podcaster more and more, as she's had her world completely turned on its head and disrupted in the world that we're operating now. She's well known to us at Dell Technologies and been actively involved in our women's entrepreneurial network, and has recently launched her latest book, You've Got This, The Life-Changing Power of Trusting Yourself. Margie's husband, and only in the last few days, has actually been diagnosed in Singapore with COVID-19. And so she herself is working through times of challenge today, but continuing to push forward and continuing to embrace the opportunities that are presented to her, even in times of adversity. She suggests at times like this that we really need to double down on what strengthens us. We need to keep doing those activities, practices, and rituals that help us feel strong and good and fit. And where we don't have those activities, we need to focus on the things that empower us to keep us moving forward. I believe that you're entering the Dell WITEM program at a fantastic time. Now is a time to stay grounded and to take care of yourself. As we've talked about to our employees, as I know the whole federal government is very focused on, and the country as a whole right now, we're very focused on the health and safety and well-being of our people. It's a time to take care, as I said, of yourself and your family and those nearest and dearest. But it's a great time to also identify and recognize what is most important to you. It's a time to reflect and understand your core values, what you stand for, to show others what you can be in times that are going to require resilience and flexibility and the ability to adapt and change in any given day or hour. Mentorship will help develop and support those goals so that you can be obviously your best self. So I think it's a fantastic time for you all as participants to be part of this. Now is also a really important time to stay connected. It's time to not only stay connected on a professional level, but also importantly on a personal level. It's a time to encourage and reflect and take those times in our changed working habits where we need to nourish our spirit, to be kind to ourselves, to be kind to others. I believe that for many of us now working out of our homes is the new norm. It's a time of adapting, and while it's still a novelty right now, as the days turn into weeks that turn into months, I think it's really, really important that while we may be physically distancing, that we are staying incredibly socially connected, because the worst possible outcome is, people feel socially isolated. We as Dell are using technology, in new ways. We've used technology as part of our everyday life for a long time to connect across our vast 170,000 workforce. But I can tell you over the last week, we've found new features, we've found new ways of engaging, collaborating across time zones, geographic boundaries. And I know some of the members of my team on this call would agree that in actual fact, we're using those tools in adversity, we've found opportunity. We're using those tools in even better, more effective ways. We're connecting, we're turning on our videos, where the engagement that we're seeing through those forums is even greater than the traditional meetings that we've held. So now technology is helping us connect not only professionally, but with our families and friends in ways we didn't even imagine before. So, people having virtual dinner parties, people having team meetings, team drinks, which actually, given our company policy, is even easier now as people sit at home and have either a peppermint tea or a glass of wine or a beer if they feel so inclined at the end of the day to stay connected. So our need for networking and connectivity is going to be challenged in new ways, but I feel that we're going to come out of this having used it in even more effectively in innovative ways. So we have to think outside the box of the constraints we have, and let's together make the most of those connections and networks. And I think today is a fantastic example. It would have been very easy for the team to just, put their heads down and think, well, no, it's not possible for us to go forward in launching WITEM. But, today is an example of how we can continue to operate. So let's think about this in terms of building your own network and building meaningful, authentic connections within that network. From my perspective, to build a strong network it's a critical part of your career. It's a critical part of life, whether those are personal networks or business networks, or potentially now we see more, overlapping of personal and professional networks. We need to identify people within our organisations and external to our organisations who have experiences that can help and guide us. It's very hard to find that single individual that serves all purposes, and it's okay to have multiple mentors as well as coaches and sponsors in that overall network around you. I'd really encourage you all to step back and think about what you want to take from your mentor relationships, but it's also important what you put into those relationships to get the absolute most out of it. As I've been involved in these sessions kicking off and wrapping up over many years, it is amazing how much both the mentors and the mentees speak of what they got from the program. And it's true to say that often the mentors leave the program even more enriched and having taken as much, if not more, away from their relationships with their mentees. I also believe that outside of mentors, coaches, and role models, it's extremely important that along the way, particularly in times of change, that you do have sponsors. A sponsor is unlike a mentor. You don't walk up to them in the hall and ask them if they'll be your sponsor. A sponsor is someone who you build a connection with over time. You gain trust, you gain backing through your actions and through the delivery on your commitments to results and to outcomes over a significant period of time. In actual fact, a lot of this relates to your brand and how your brand is being projected and how your brand is perceived by key stakeholders and influencers within both your business, the community, and your network as a whole. In times of change, these individuals will know your value. They'll be prepared to back your potential. And there's certainly a lesson there that I learned firsthand 7 years ago. I was asked to take an opportunity based out of Singapore to lead our services business. It was a great opportunity. It was actually a promotion for me into a vice president position within our organization. So I took my family, my husband, my daughter, and off we went to build a new life in Singapore without a view of where that would go and where that could take us next. It was an opportunity for me to experience life out of Australia and New Zealand. But for me, less than 2 years later, a global restructure found me without a job. This is the reality of corporate life. It's the reality of life for many of us. And as we know in society today, many, many people are facing uncertainty with regard to their future. So I went through a very uncertain period. I went through a period while I still remained on the payroll, it was not clear what my next opportunity or job or responsibility was going to be. I was probably one of the highest paid paper movers in the business as I reached out and took on projects and opportunities as they presented themselves as I navigated through what would be next. But it really drove me, in me, an inherent need to get out there and really expand my network. It was fair to say that I'd always worked hard. I did have supporters, I did have sponsors, but I was one of those people that was about, head down, bum up, do a good job, you'll be recognized, you'll be okay. But what became evident to me is I really had to get out of my comfort zone. I had to double down. I needed to ensure that people knew who I was, what I was capable of, and what I stood for. I did feel like I took the caravan on the road. It didn't feel natural, and it really was a tour of self-promotion, but one that was critically important for me to secure my future in a company in which I believed in a company which I wanted to be part of my future. I decided I was not going to leave without having turned over every possible opportunity for me to stay. As I said, I work for a company who I clearly identify with our core purpose, our values, what we stand for, and the outcomes that we drive every day. So I wasn't going to walk away easily. And I strongly believed that I had the skills and the capability to contribute to our company and its future. So finally, and quite fortuitously, and I do believe sometimes the stars line up, my predecessor in the leader of the One ANZ business, the gentleman who actually launched this program, chose to retire. And so I was able to come back and run the ANZ business, which was frankly a fantastic opportunity, a great job, and was able to also bring me closer to home. So I came to this point in my career, in part due to the network I had built, the connections I created, the guidance of the network, the people that I had to lean into and take advice and guidance through. But I think my key message here in the current times is through adversity, there's opportunity. As humans, we're incredibly resilient, and it's through adversity that we're challenged to innovate and thrive. And I hope that we can explore some new ways to connect with you and your mentors over the coming months. I know many of you have had bright and successful careers and are going to go on to have even greater contributions within the public sector and beyond. So my key message here is let's be creative, let's innovate, let's stay connected, let's find the opportunity to find new and unexpected ways of engaging throughout the program. I encourage you to enter the program open to your own possibilities, to take the time to self-assess and focus on your potential. There has never been a greater time to prioritise what is clearly critically important, but not always on our urgent list, and that is one of professional and self-development. I look forward to seeing where this journey takes you, where it takes us all over the course of this chapter of Dell Women program. So thank you very much, and thank you once again to Jenny, her team, for the support of the program, and to Randall and his team for once again sponsoring the WITEM program. Over to you.
Thanks, Angela. And thank you for those kind words and inspiring words. And I think, as you said, this program is perhaps more important than ever, and how we're learning how to communicate remotely and use collaboration tools is going to be a key asset for everyone in the workforce moving forward. And to that extent, despite the challenges we're having, this is still the highest numbers we've had in this program, with the highest numbers of female mentors, which is fantastic. So what we might do now is move into some questions. I'd like to going to hear from two participants of the program previously. So Randall, CEO of Digital Transformation Agency, who has done this more times than I think he can remember, and Jade Carson, who's the CIO of the Commonwealth Ombudsman and was Randall's mentee last year. We'd like to welcome Randall and Jade here, who's dialing in from her workplace, as I understand. We're going to pose some questions. So I'd like to start with Randall, if we can, please. So can you describe your involvement in WITEM and when you became a mentor for Jade?
So I was involved in the WITEM program from 2011. So this year, I think, is my 10th anniversary. Jade and I were matched and started our kind of professional kind of mentoring relationship in August 2018, I think it was, Jade. Jade should be very proud of what she's done over the last 18 months. It's been an excellent experience. I've had a wonderful range of people that I've been involved in, both in the WITEM program as well as coaching circles, which is for our L1 female leaders. And it's been also great to see that we have many of our ex-mentees coming in now as mentors, and Helen Thompson, among others, have gone through that cycle of being involved in the program as a mentee, now as mentors. So yeah, it's great.
All right, thank you. Jade, I'd like to hear from you now, so you'll need to come off mute if you can for me, please. I'm interested, what were your thoughts, feelings and expectations coming into the program for your first year?
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks for inviting me. So I hope you can all hear me. Excellent. I was asked if I wanted to participate in the program, and I was really excited to be able to participate. It was an opportunity for me to learn and grow and have access to a senior government executive in ICT, which you don't usually get. So it was a real valuable opportunity for that I saw that I was able to partake in.
Okay, thank you. And I guess for the benefit of new mentees coming into this program, Jade, what obstacles did you face participating in the program, and how did you get around them? So, for example, I know Randall's pretty busy. I struggle with that myself, just working in the DTA. I'm interested to hear how you overcome those and offer some advice to folk coming into this program, dealing with senior executive in the Australian Public Service.
Yeah, so Randall is a very, very busy person, but he's always makes himself available as well. But he also has great EAs. So you leverage the use of the EA to be able to make sure you can find a suitable time. We were actually located in the same building, so the location made it really good. But considering these times now, using digital means of communicating with each other probably means it makes it easier for everybody if we think in those terms. So the location doesn't need to be a barrier for this round and ongoing rounds. I think we can use this as learning. One of the, I wouldn't call it a barrier, but there's some things as a mentee you need to be prepared. So when you go into those conversations, I can't say that I was well prepared. Sometimes those days, they come up really quick, they're in your calendar and you go to the meeting and you don't know what you're going to say or talk about. So I can't say that I ever got really good at that, but that'd probably be the one thing that I would say to people. Really think about what you want to get out of it beforehand, maybe document some of those things. So when you go to those meetings or those catch-ups, that you know what it is you want to get out of it and talk about in those times. Some of the other things potentially is about reaching out to your other mentees that are there. So you can talk to your other mentees about other things. They've also experienced some of the same problems that you're experiencing and can see it from a from your level or where you are, where you're using your mentor to be able to help give you more as a sounding board or understanding what the executive might be thinking when you're encountering problems at work or something like that. So there are probably 3 key things that I took away and some of those barriers or learnings that I took.
Thank you. And Randall, perhaps for you, if I can, what was your experience in the program and what advice would you offer mentees coming into it to make sure they get the best from the process and obviously your time or their mentor's time?
I think Jade downplayed how organised her thinking was when it came to her career. Her flight plan, I think it was, Jade, fared very heavily and was shared broadly amongst last year's program participants. But what it illustrated was a level of thought that preceded the program. And so it doesn't all need to be the things that you're thinking you should discuss as a consequence of the program. This is an opportunity just to engage and have broad discussions. And it's absolutely okay to just turn up and say, I've had a horrible week. Here are the things that I've been thinking through. Can we just talk about how I've responded, how I might refine my thinking, how I might position strategy? And it's not going to be the same in any one conversation or for any one mentor-mentee relationship. As I said, having been involved in the program for quite a few years, I've had experience with mentees who've had really strategic plans about their career, the view of strengths and weaknesses, and quite a deliberate plan to move from one place to another, versus discussions that I had in one of the program years, which related to dealing with change and conflict in the workplace and exerting influence and persuading those more senior or peers where they didn't have control. And that was the theme for almost all the discussions. And I learned a lot, and this is something that I think every mentor, and I really appreciate the support of all of the mentors. The mentors get just as much out of this as mentees. I've learned an incredible amount, both in my work and personal life. So I have 3 daughters, 22, 18 and 18, and my twins, 18, have just started their careers in IT. And what I've learned from many of the mentees and my interactions with Women in Digital has helped me provide advice to them as a dad. And so the amount of learning that you get as a participant in this program in both directions is incredible. And I think having it such that you are flexible and open and look at this both as a professional as well as a human being is the way that you'll get the best out of this program.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to pose another question to Jade, but just before I do that, if anyone has a question, I'd like to open it up to participants. 2 ways you can do that: come off mute or in the messaging function in Zoom, which I think is in the top-hand corner of the function, of the application. You can type a message in there and I can read it out to everyone. So 2 options there. But while you're thinking about a question for Jade or Randall, Jade, I guess what surprised you in this program? So you spoke a lot about the need to make sure that you committed time to it, and I guess despite senior executive being busy like Randall, they make time leveraging the executive cohorts and so forth to make sure calendars lined up. And it's okay not always to have a detailed plan of what to say, but to commit to it. But I guess what surprised you? Did you have a moment in the program where you went, I didn't expect to get that much out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess what surprised and delighted me was actually Randall's commitment to ensuring equity in ICT and the APS. So I found that really great. The WITEM program is not just you know, because we're ticking a box in a strategy or something like that. There's actually a commitment. Like Randall being a member for over 10 years shows that the mentors and all the other mentors that are participating aren't doing it just for themselves or something. They're actually doing it because they're committed to increasing equity in ICT, and in particular in the APS. So that really delighted me, which was great. And I was also delighted by the ability to be able to talk in a confidential manner to someone about issues. So that was really great. And actually getting an opportunity to be a CIO, that resulted from the program. And it's not something I ever thought I would do. It's not something that was on my flight plan, my career plan. So there are some great opportunities that can come out of it, and I've been delightfully surprised.
Okay, fantastic. Just opening up now to participants on Zoom. Come off mute if you'd like. Any questions for Randall or Jane? And it's okay if you don't.
Jade, I've got a question.
Sure. Hi, Marissa.
How are you going? Were there times when you had to use different forums of communications when you wanted to meet Randall because he might have been travelling or you couldn't attend face to face?
Yeah, so I would flick Randall emails and he would always respond. So email was our other way of communicating.
But also, I remember Jade. Jade was about to go into a Band 1 interview, and I was sitting one night in our home, and Jade and I just had the discussion about the kinds of things that I would value when it comes to discussions in interview and strategies for dealing with different kinds of topics. So, you know, there is an opportunity for us to be really flexible and extend it beyond, you know, a monthly meeting cadence where you aim to kind of tick off the check boxes in the WITEM manual. It can be whatever you want it to be, and I'd say exploit those opportunities whenever you get them.
Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. So I'm conscious of time, got a few things to get through this morning. If you have any more questions, we'll have a process for you to ask those, and we can come back to you. This session's also being recorded as well. We also had some additional nominations overnight, and that's the value of going digital, is you don't have to wait for a physical event or lose that physical event. You can see this experience at a later date and we'll make that available to folk. But Randall, just before we move into the next session, any final thoughts you'd like to offer the group?
I won't reiterate the full extent of what Angela had mentioned and what we're all kind of grappling with right now, but we're living in unprecedented times that's having a profound impact on our work and personal lives. You know, my encouragement is that leadership in times of certainty is really easy. For us to step up and deal with the kinds of complexities that we're facing right now is something that people expect of us. I strongly feel people looking up to me for direction and advice, and I'm sure you all feel that as well. So I think it's up to us as leaders to take the opportunities to engage, as Angela said, to be kind to one another, and realise that many people are in much more difficult situations than we are. I can't even imagine. My eldest daughter has 2 jobs that she's just been laid off from, and ANU, which is her last semester, has said don't come anymore, and she doesn't know whether she's going to be able to graduate in the middle of the year. But then you look at some of the people who are dealing with much more significant impacts where it's their only source of income. They have a business that has multiple employees, they have mortgages, they have debt. The mental stress that people are feeling across the globe is just massive. So all I would say is look after yourselves, your friends, your family, and your colleagues. This is still an excellent opportunity, again, as Angela said, to maintain that connection where inevitably we will see more people working remotely. I can't even imagine what it would be like if we didn't have enabling technology as we do now. It's both you know, a blessing and a curse. The information flows that we see today mean that it is an instant update that you get on the next death or the statistics, which tend to be unsettling, but it also lets us do the kinds of things that we're doing now. We in the DTA had our first virtual all staff yesterday, where I just explained to staff what was happening in the DTA nationally, and then what we understood globally, and how that impacts them. So WITEM will be what you make it. It is a time for us to, I think, step up and make a big difference in improving that balance. And as Jade said, it's something that I'm absolutely committed to. The DTA, I'm really proud, is more than 50% female overall for a digital organisation. That's pretty incredible. But where we're lagging is our senior executive are not 50% female yet, but we're driving toward that. We are close. but we need to apply that into everything that we do. It's not simply a matter of looking at how you recruit. It's a matter of looking at conferences to see what gender balance they have in speakers. It's looking at the combination of teams that you have sitting around a table and providing great opportunities for everybody to input, and in flexible working and so on. It is something that goes without saying, something that will be exploited even further. So this will be what you make it. I have thoroughly enjoyed every year that I've been involved, and I'd encourage you to do the same. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Randall. And just a bit of digital housekeeping again, we're all getting used to this technology. If you can for us, can you update your name in Zoom so it's easiest for us to find you when we're setting up these virtual rooms? If you're having any trouble, capability@dta.gov.au can help. And that's just to make sure we know who we're talking to, because I can see a Galaxy Note 4 there in the corner. I'm sure that's actually a person looking at the program. So that would help us immensely. Thank you. Now I'd like to move into the next session if I can.
So I'm going to disappear.
That's okay. Thank you very much for your time, Randall. And now I'd like to introduce Jenny Morris from the Orijen group. The Orijen will be running the WITEM program and will be making contacts over the next year for anything you need regarding WITEM. So please keep your chat windows open. Jenny has a couple of activities for you to do this presentation. So I'd like to welcome Jenny, and over to you. And obviously we'll start taking over the screen now, and you should start to see a presentation from Jenny appearing now.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you who've been involved in this. It's been a truly combined effort, and particularly I would like to thank, before I go any further, Randall and Angela for their extraordinary leadership in these times. So if we go on to the next slide, my role here is to do the formal stuff. So a lot of this will probably be very familiar to you. Some of it may not necessarily be in your consciousness, but I'm hoping that it will all make sense. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but perhaps just to clarify some of the issues that really inform this program and that ensure that it continues to be the success it's been. So I'm going to run through the structure, sort of the basics of the program. I'll talk briefly about the evaluation and then some tips and tools to increase your success in your relationship, many of which I think you'll see have already been expressed by both Randall and Jade. And Jade, congratulations to you on your promotion. So the next slide, I guess it's important for me that you understand that this program has a history. Randall's been in it, as he says, for 10 years, which is just so encouraging and really a great indication of his commitment to gender equity. So through the work of both Dell and Randall's work, and before that Department of Finance, this program has actually been recognised as having, as being an exemplar of best practice. So with that behind us, I guess we continue to refine it. 10 years ago, it looked a little bit different to what it does now, but as each year progresses and as circumstances that we're seeing now change, we're adapting, and we need that flexibility to ensure that it still keeps meeting the needs of the people who are involved. Next. So to run through what's been happening to date and then what you can expect. The matching. Thank you to all of you who spent that time sending us both your original application and the information you gave us on that, and also the questionnaires that we sent out. Your CVs, those who've sent CVs, have been really helpful, and we've also had LinkedIn to refer to. All of that goes together, and we will then, or we have then, made matches which are the best matches that we think are possible given the information that we have. That said, there is some information that we don't have. For instance, we will not know if we've matched you with someone who is in fact the sister of your ex-wife or ex-husband or an old boyfriend, particularly, or girlfriend, particularly when we're working in a village such as Canberra. So please, I implore you, don't stay with a relationship if you know it's not going to work. There is no shame, there is no blame. If the match doesn't work, if you're feeling uncomfortable with it, uncertain, we don't even need you to be able to articulate that. We just need you to come back to us, back to me, say that you're not happy with the match, and we will rematch. I cannot emphasize strongly enough. We don't want to have anybody sitting with a mentor or mentee for a year feeling uncomfortable. It's not good for you, it's not good for the relationship, and also you probably won't meet. Okay, next. And the other thing we've done is we've matched you with someone as far away as possible from the department you're working in now, or any department you may have worked in the past. And this is really important, because we don't want you ever to be in a position where you have to measure your words because you're concerned that what you're saying may impact your career. Go to the briefing, which is now, obviously that's changed, and I'm really keen to get your feedback as to how effective it is working this way. I'm feeling a little bit at sea, not being able to see people's faces, but I guess that's part of the learning process. This particular presentation, the whole launch will be then put up on the website. You'll be given instructions so that if you ever want to go back and check either something in the slides or something in any of the presentations, it's there for you. The program goes for 12 months. We say they're 1 hour face-to-face, whether that's face-to-face in reality, which it won't be now, but hopefully by the end of the program, you will be able to meet face-to-face. But again, whatever technology you agree to use will be worthwhile in terms of getting that 1 hour one per month. We do see that it's important to get those first 3 months in regularly. So we encourage you to get those into your diaries. There seems to be a magical change in relationships, and having run these now for over 20 years, these programs, that at 3 months there seems to be a switch where you're no longer feeling that you're introducing yourself, setting it up. You really are into a relationship where the trust has deepened and the communication is easier. We bring everyone together in a circle, starting with a mentee circle at midterm, then again at 9 months and 12 months. And that's where, I guess, the peer mentoring comes into play. So those of you who've been in the mentee circles or the mentoring circles to date will understand what this is about. Those who haven't, it brings together all the mentees. We have, again, a closed circle, brick walls, but there are 2 key advantages of this, benefits. One is that the mentees can share what they've learned from their mentor with the other mentees. So you get a very rich information gathering. And at the same time, the mentees then have each other as peers to be able to connect with. And what we found is that these mentee circles actually continue after the program finishes, so that we get the sustainability aspect to the program. So I know almost one of the first programs that we ever ran, right back in 2007, I think, those mentees, many of whom are now in the SES, continue to meet for breakfasts. They found those relationships so valuable. 9 months we bring you back together, and then 12 months at the final review. At the same time, or an hour before the mentees meet, we have a midterm networking and review session. And that's where we bring the mentors back together, where we will ask you, are there any things that you would like some support with? Are there any themes that you're seeing that would be helpful for others in the APS at the SES level to know? We also make sure, though, for the confidence of the mentees, that we don't mention names. And in fact, we ask the mentors to send any issues they'd like to talk about via email, so that we can then present them anonymously to the group. Brick walls trust is really critical for this program. So we need everybody to feel comfortable that their relationship is closed. We also then at 4 months send out a review, and again at 12 months. Within that review, and you'll see it come up a bit later, but if we find that anything is showing there, we will go straight back as an issue. For instance, if someone is scoring low on a particular quality, we'll go straight back to the person who made that comment and ask, what would you like to do about it? What would you like us to do about it? So we'll have a conversation about it. It may be that nothing happens, it was just an expression, but it may be that, particularly at the 4 month one, if we see that the relationship isn't working, that whether that's by virtue of the ratings or the fact that you haven't met, we will go back and look at and revisit it. And then at the end, we have a program graduation, which is both a bit of a celebration and a wake, because being together for 12 months really creates very, very strong relationships. We do say, though, at the end that the mentor relationship finishes at 12 months. No mentor, or at least the structured and formal side of the relationship. You may continue as friends, you may continue as peers, but the actual relationship, we say, will take on a different form after 12 months. Next. So I'd like to ask you a couple of things just to get you thinking about what your relationship is going to be and what are the boundaries of the relationship. There are many different versions and definitions of coaching and mentoring, many of which overlap and many of which are used interchangeably. So what I'd like to just quickly go through and ask you in the chat line, what are some of the words that you associate with sponsor? A simple way of looking at those differences, and I think you've certainly highlighted a lot of those differences in the chats. whether you're a manager or, sorry, whether you're a mentor or a mentee, if you can think about where is the focus of our conversation? Is it on the organisation or is it on the individual? So if you look at a sponsor's focus is completely on the organisation. And that's really critical to know, because if you have a sponsor, you want to put yourself in the very, very, very best light with your sponsor. So the sponsor isn't a person you go to talk about your fears, your anxieties, to look to for support. So sponsors are very focused on the organisation. And you look across to the manager is still primarily focused on the organisation's goals. So the organisation's goals around performance, success, KPIs, etc. With some individual focus, a good manager will be looking out for the individual. If you go across to the coach is looking at both, but primarily the coach's focus is on the organisation. So if you look at a swimming coach, for instance, the swimming coach will make sure that your stroke is going perfectly. They'll look at every aspect of your behaviour. With a coach, you're looking at someone who is an expert, and the coach, in fact, drives the relationship. Obviously, though, a coach needs to understand the person. So if we're looking at, as coaches, an individual assignment, we would look at doing a battery of psychological tests to understand what it is that drives the person's behaviour. But coaching is normally short-term and has clearly defined results and clearly defined outcomes. If we move across to the mentor, you can see that for the mentor, we still have a focus on the organisation. We need to know the environment in which we're working, but the greater focus is on the individual, which opens it up far wider than any performance or any outcome result. So it very much is around, can move from work to life, to family, to work-life balance, to anything that, in fact, the mentee would like some advice or some feedback from the mentor. I'm going to come back in a minute to the coach mentor, but let's just go right across now to the counsellor. The counsellor is obviously someone whose focus is completely on the individual. And that focus then is highly confidential. It's within a very closed space and relies on the expertise of the counsellor, whether it's a psychologist, whether it's a psychiatrist, whether it's someone in your EAP program. So if we look at the coach, mentor, counsellor, firstly, I'd like to say that for the coaching is led by the coach, mentoring is led by the mentee, and that then puts the onus on the mentee to think through what you would like to achieve, what the objectives of the session are, and to come prepared. If in the mentoring relationship, the coach is doing most of the talking, sorry, the mentor is doing most of the talking, just think back to this model and assess whether, in fact, the mentor is doing more coaching than mentoring. It is absolutely okay to dip into each, and of course, at various times you will. The mentor at times will find themselves coaching on a specific area or will counsel on a specific problem. But if the majority of your time is spent coaching or counselling, then you're not mentoring. I'd like to say something about the counselling aspect, particularly in these difficult times, and I can assume they're only going to get more difficult and there are going to be more personal issues arising as people are confined in spaces which they're not normally forced to do. Given that there is often, particularly as it develops, quite a close relationship between the mentor and the mentee, at times the mentor may find that they're being asked to counsel and to provide advice that probably is outside their capability and their comfort. So please don't feel that just because, and I'm talking to the mentors now, just because you have someone with you who has real issues, that you have to solve them. The best advice I can give you at this stage is, please, if you feel that that's an issue or if you're feeling uncomfortable, please come to me. I am a psychologist, and talk it through with me with the permission of your mentee. But ultimately, I would be encouraging you to refer your mentee onto a counsellor. Similarly, for mentees, be aware that your mentors does have boundaries also around what they are comfortable working with, and be open to going to see someone that may then have a more professional counselling position. So if just very quickly then to go back to the normal, coaching is led by the coach, mentoring is led by the mentee. Can I have the next slide, please? Next slide. Obviously the definition then is important, and really the mentoring is just about guiding a mentee to develop professionally and personally to be the best they possibly can be. So it's a very, very open definition. Next. So for the mentor, the role of the mentor, and I think Randall gave some beautiful examples of this, is really, as you'll see from that, it's to help the mentee make decisions for themselves about their career, their behaviour, their actions, their self-discovery, their solutions, their strategies. In particular, the mentor's role is around guidance, bringing your own experiences to the relationship, but not as made feel more comfortable actually telling your mentee what to do. So it's a much slower, a much more gradual, but a much more sustainable process. I do have mentors at times come to me and say, Jenny, I sort of feel I'm not doing anything. I'm just doing a lot of listening, but I don't really know that I'm helping. And I will have the same mentee with the feedback. It's just fantastic. I'm getting so much out of this relationship. So can I encourage mentors, if you're feeling uncertain, just ask. Next, please. It's important also to note, going back to our slide earlier about the sponsor, mentor's role is not to provide unfair advantage, privilege or favours. So that means you may at times, and let me give you an example, and it's a combination really of the first 2 points. I was working in a program with one of our major airlines and I had a call from one of the mentors to say, Jenny, I've been working with my mentee on this issue for a number of sessions and we just don't seem to be getting anywhere. There seems to be a problem with the audio. I'll keep going unless someone tells me not to. That there's, yeah, so my mentor said that, okay, thank you, that her situation with her mentee was that they weren't getting anywhere, but she was, the mentor was having lunch with her friend of hers who happened to be the boss of the mentee, and could she mention it? In other words, could she could she provide some help to the mentee? And of course the answer is no. As soon as those brick walls start to crumble, then trust starts to fall off. In many ways, in many cases, it's with the best possible intentions, but if you could just be very clear that the relationship stays within those bounds and that the mentor, and for the mentees, your mentor is not there to promote you or again, to provide you with any privileges or favours. And also to be an expert on all matters, in which for this particular program where you certainly aren't necessarily matched with someone who's from the same technical or functional expertise that you have. Okay, next one. So just very quickly, you'll see this, from what I've said, the mentee's responsibility is actually to initiate the meeting. So we ask the mentee to be the person to call the mentor. We do ask the mentor to make sure that the gatekeeper leaves the door open so that they can get through, but the responsibility is for the mentees. For mentors, at times I have mentors ring me after 3 or 4 months and say, my mentee just hasn't contacted me. Can I contact her? Of course you can. Common sense really prevails with all this. But it's important that the mentees do take that responsibility. Come to each meeting prepared, as both Randall and Jade mentioned, set realistic expectations and be open. It's really important that you can be open to both negative and positive feedback and recognise the mentor's limitations and the boundaries. Okay, next. I put this slide in for the mentees, but I think Randall covered it beautifully by saying that this relationship really is a gift exchange and that the mentors really benefit and are rewarded almost equally, probably equally as are the mentees. And that's often a perspective that the mentees don't have. Mentees can often come to me and say, but my mentor is so busy, I really feel a bit guilty about taking up all his or her time. But let me just reinforce here that it is a gift exchange and both of you are benefiting and growing. Next. This slide, and I encourage you to come back to it if you're concerned about what you should be talking about, but given the way the program's aims and objectives are, I think it's a really good indication. When we ask in the final review, what were the things that you talked about the most? Career management and career direction were the key ones, and then building relationships, influencing leadership, delegating. So I think the interesting thing there is, and one of the things I think that talks to the fact that this program is doing what we're hoping it will do, which will get beyond, out of the weeds into much more strategic, big picture thinking, is that business management, time management for very low project management technical skills are the least talked about or discussed. doesn't mean to say you can't do it, but just be aware that, you know, coming in and talking about day-to-day problems is not necessarily what we'd ask you to do. Okay, going on to the next slide. Potential derailers, lack of structure. We've addressed that by really putting the structure into the program itself, but not into your individual conversations and relationships. The lack of trust, confidentiality, we've talked about, and hence that being really at the very top of the concerns about these relationships. Competing priorities will always be an issue, and that's where a discussion is really important, and conflict of interest. We do encourage you to put those dates in your diaries now, so that even if something else comes up, which I'm sure it will, you at least have the opportunity to change that rather than be looking to create new diary entries. If you miss a couple of sessions, it can take a bit more time to get the momentum up again. And ego. I say this with great kindness and great love, but to the mentors, it's not about you, it's about the mentee. I'm sure most of you will understand that, but it talks to the fact that you may not see the growth and the outcomes. It's not like when you're managing someone and you can measure and get that personal feedback that something's working. It's a much more subtle process. I must tell you about, I did this presentation with a group of investment bankers one time, and as the mentors were leaving the room, one of them turned around and said to the group, well, I just want you to know that my mentee is going to be the first person to get director level. And it was like, boy, was he held down. It's not about him and his performance in getting his mentee to be director. It's about the mentee and their goals and reaching their potential. Next. Just very quickly, we do check in at 5 months and 12 months with a questionnaire. Next, please. That questionnaire then looks at rating of the mentor qualities, the relationship, the program. We get feedback there, and the mentee qualities, and if there is a problem there, that's when we will come back to you. Again, all that information is completely confidential between you and us. Next. The gains that you can expect, these are the things that actually make my heart sing. The long-term gains that we see that consistently increases in self-esteem and confidence. And to me, if we're achieving that in this program, then all of the things on the left-hand side, improvements in the job, existing skills, will be achieved, as with any intervention. And next. Next. So, next steps. Firstly, diarise your meetings, please. Oh, sorry, I think this, I've got a picture over the top of this. Tips, I think this says. So diarise your meetings, return phone calls within 24 hours, and thank you, Randall, for reinforcing this. Review the goals regularly. There are, if you dip into the toolkit which you've been sent, there are some really nice templates which I would encourage you to use. There are templates around the discussions, around your meetings, but also things to review the meeting, which is a really good starting point for your next meeting. Next. Within the toolkit, you'll see that there are some really, I think, helpful notes. Once again, I encourage you to do that. The section 4 talks about your actual meetings, and the first page of that is page 29, which is getting to know you. So we've set out there a nice little template for questions for the mentor to ask the mentee, questions for the mentee to ask the mentor. It sort of fast tracks your relationship. It gets past that horrible sort of blind date of sitting opposite someone, even if it is virtually. So I encourage you to dip into your workbook, open up at that page for the next part of the program, which is when we then introduce you to your match. There is a code of ethics that underpins the program, which I think is really important also, just for your confidence and to know that we are really consistent with that. So